Years later, new information arises in the Menendez brothers' murder case. Will these new details set them free? Let's find out on this edition of the Let's Talk Live podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Let's Talk Live podcast. It is January 6, 2023, and this is episode 21. I want to welcome everybody in. You can see the chat is starting to fill in there a little bit. And a little bit of different material this evening. You know, everything can't be Idaho all the time. There are other cases and other things that are going on in the world, and I think that we need to come on live and talk about some other stuff as well. So, again, we'll start pushing forward with some new cases here. We're not going to solve Idaho in one night. Believe me, we're not going to do it. Anyway, so we'll get into the Menendez brothers. There's been some new information that has popped up in their case. And I think with this new recent documentary series that have come out on Netflix, there's been some new allegations or new information has come forward. So what I always like to do in these types of situations is I like to look back first. Always like to look back in the case, give some context to, excuse me, what's going on and what happened. So I'm going to bring this up from Wikipedia here. Let me just enlarge it for everybody, and we'll read through. I'm not going to go through the entire details in it, but I want to at least just get to the crime section of it, what these two brothers were involved in and what they said happened. So on the evening of August 20th, 1989, Jose and Kitty were standing in the den of their Beverly Hills mansion, and Lyle and Eric entered the den carrying shotguns. Jose was shot 6 times, including a fatal shot in the back of the head with a Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun. Kitty was shot 10 times in total before the fatal shot to her cheek. She was on the ground, slowly crawling and moaning. Lyle then ran to his car to reload and then fired the fatal shot to her face. Immediately after the killings, both brothers remained in the house expecting the police to respond due to the noise of the gunshots. When the police arrived, the brothers told them that the killings had occurred while they were out at a movie theater seeing Batman, and that's Tim Burton's Batman, not the Batman that we know of now. So this would be like, this is 1989. In attending a Taste of LA festival in Santa Monica Civic Auditorium. The police did not seek gunshot residue tests from the brothers, which had been indicated whether they had been recently shot, discharged firearms. In the months after the killings, the brothers began to spend extravagantly on luxury items, business and travel. Lyle bought a Chuck Spring Street Cafe, a Buffalo Wing restaurant in Princeton, New Jersey, as well as a Rolex watch and Porsche Carrera. Eric hired a full-time tennis coach and competed in series of tournaments in Israel. The brothers eventually left Beverly Hills mansion unoccupied, choosing to live in adjoining condominiums in nearby Marina del Rey. They also dined expensively and went overseas trips to the Caribbean and London. They collectively spent almost $700,000 before their arrest. Family members later disputed the connection between the spending and the murders of the parents, claiming that there were no charges in the spending habits after the killings. It's like crazy. You go out, you murder your parents, then you're out spending all their money. I mean, it's probably not the smartest thing for a criminal to do, especially with these two clowns that almost actually got away with this. And, all this new information that's coming out. I mean, to me, in my opinion, and you'll hear about this a little bit later in the show, I don't really think that information is going to exonerate them, because it doesn't give you the right to go and murder your parents and then spend all of their money. So we'll hear about the new details that are going to come up here in a minute. And I just want to keep reading through here and just get a feel and a background for the case. So so let's see, at one point they attended a New York Knicks basketball game, which became immortalized when they appeared courtside in the background of Mark Jackson's trading card. And I'll bring up that trading card because that started to kind of spawn some interest in about 2018. I think it went viral on Reddit and people were like really talking about that. And I remember that actually popping up on the internet and seeing that. And it's crazy. You can see them courtside at that Knicks game. During the early stages of the investigation, the police tried to narrow their search to suspects who had motives to kill Jose and Kitty, and also investigated potential mob leads. As their investigation continued, they began to suspect that the brothers were most likely perpetrators because of the obvious financial motive and their exorbitant spending after the killing. Well, duh. In the attempt of a confession from Eric, the police arranged his friend Craig Signorelli to wear a wire, during a lunch with Eric at a local beachfront restaurant. But Signorelli asked Eric whether he had killed his parents, and Eric denied it. Eric eventually confessed to a psychologist, Jerome Ozell, who told his mistress, Jolene Smith, I think it's Ozdel, later broke up with Smith in a fit of rage to get back at him, told police about the brothers' involvement. This basically what happened was Eric started to confess to this psychologist because he felt like it was under kind of like this, like attorney-client privilege. But apparently, I don't think that once all this stuff started to come out, that's when this person went to the police. Lyle was arrested on March 8th, 1990, and Eric turned himself in 3 days later after returning to Los Angeles from Israel. Both were held without bail and kept separate from each other. In 1990, Judge Adams Albright ruled that the tapes of the confession between Eric and Ozell were admissible evidence, since Ozell stated that Lyle allegedly threatened him and violated doctor-patient privileges. He basically said he was going to kill him if he said anything. The ruling was appealed after the proceedings were delayed for 2 years. The Supreme Court of California ruled that in 1992, most of the tapes were admissible, with the exception of the tape on which Eric was recorded discussing the murders. After the discussion, the LA County grand jury issued an indictment on 1992, charging the brothers with the murders of their parents. So I remember I was very, very young when this happened. I think I remember, oh God, I was probably 11 or 12 years old, like when I first heard about this. And then when it eventually went into trial, I mean, it was probably like 13, 14, probably 15 years old. This was like a big thing. I remember, and you probably all remember in the chat too, this was a really, really big thing out there. This was a big topic of conversation. It was broadcast on Court TV. I remember seeing it there. And, I remember like the whole thing of them like crying on the stand. That was all hyper polarized and just really shot across like the whole news spectrum. So it was just a really interesting case. I think they deadlocked actually the first time that they went in. So we'll just read about this real quick. The Menendez became most national association when Court TV broadcast a trial in 1993, representing. I mean, they killed them in '89, and they weren't brought to trial until 93. Represented by the defense lawyer Leslie Abrams, the brothers stated that they had killed their parents out of fear for their lives after the lifetime of abuse at the hands of their parents, especially sexual abuse at the hands of their father, who was described as cruel, perfectionist, and a pedo. Meanwhile, their mother was described as an enabling, selfish, mentally unstable alcoholic and drug addict who encouraged her husband's behavior and also violent towards the brothers. So why not just move, or why not call the police? Why kill your parents? And I think that was the big questions in all of this. I'm not going to read too much more out of the wiki because I do want to get into some of the videos that I do have planned this evening. But I did want to bring this up a little bit too, because it kind of fast forwards us to present day as to what's going on. So from the LA Times, this was written on May 3rd, and it says Eric and Lyle Menendez, the brothers who shot and killed their parents in their Beverly Hills mansion, are asking the courts to vacate their 1996 convictions, citing that new evidence from a docuseries alleging that their father sexually assaulted a former teenager of the band Menudo. And if you know anything about Menudo, you probably have heard Ricky Martin was in that band as well. Ray, I think it's Rossiello, a former member of the international popular boy band in the 1980s, alleged that he was drugged and raped when he was 13 or 14 years old by Jose Menendez at RCA Records, as he was an RCA Records executive at the time. The allegations were first raised in a Peacock docuseries, Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed, the three-part series that looked into the allegations that band members were abused by the group's creator, Eduardo Diaz. In the series reported by the journalist, Rosillo alleges Diaz sexually abused him during the time of the band. The Los Angeles Police Department confirmed that they had opened the investigation into at least one of the alleged attacks. Rosillo also claimed that Diaz took him to the Menendez, New Jersey home at the age of 13 or 14, where he was allegedly drugged and raped by the elder Menendez. Rosillo, suggests the trip was to help seal the deal between the boy band and the record company. In their petition filed Wednesday, attorneys for the Menendez brothers argue with the new allegations of abuse backed by the siblings' contention that the murders were an act of self-defense after facing years of abuse by their parents and fear that their parents would kill them if they exposed the abuse. The petition also cites a newly discovered letter written by Eric Menendez to his cousin suggesting that the alleged sexual abuse continued as recently as months before the deadly shootings. The new evidence not only shows that Jose Menendez was very much a violent and brutal man who would sexually abuse their children, but it strongly suggests that, in fact, he was abusing Eric Menendez as late as 1988, the filing reads. Eric and Lyle Menendez alleged during the high-profile trials that they had been subject to sexual, physical, and emotional abuse at the hands of their parents. So that's kind of get you caught up to speed as what's going on. I do some videos here that I want to play through, but I also want to show you that basketball card that became a huge topic of conversation in, I think it was like 2018. So this is the Mark Jackson trading card here. And you can see the Menendez brothers off to the left, and they had actually bought courtside seats to the Knicks. It's crazy. Netflix announced on Monday that a new next series of Monster anthology series would be about the Menendez brothers. The second season would be titled Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, and we'll look forward to the massive success of the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Lyle and Eric were brothers convicted in 1996 for the brutal murders of their parents, Jose and Kitty Menendez, in 1989. The brothers were not initially named as suspects in the murder, and they were able to spend a lot of their money that was inherited from their parents. One of the things that they bought were courtside seats at a New York Knicks game in the 1989-90 season, and they were even caught on camera, and the images were used by Mark Jackson's 1990 NBA Hoops rookie card. This is crazy. I think I actually have this card somewhere. But that's crazy. You can see them off to the left. And I just wanted to kind of bring that up so you saw some context to that too. So let's play some videos here, and this will give us some more information, some perspective of what's being talked about in the media. And we'll take it away here with the first one from the Today Show. It's going to kind of take us back and take us fast forward to where we're at in this new developments in this case.
In the 1990s, the trials and story of Eric and Lyle Menendez captivated the country. The brothers convicted of murdering their parents, Jose and Kitty.
The jury recommended life in prison without parole for gunning down their parents.
In the deciding trial, all testimony of sexual abuse was deemed inadmissible, the judge citing irrelevance. But now, for the first time, another alleged victim of Jose Menendez is coming forward with accusations of sexual abuse. And it could mean a chance at freedom for the Menendez brothers.
It's time for the world to know the truth.
In a new docuseries called Menendez Menudo Boys Betrayed, former Menudo band member Roy Rosello says he was molested by then-head of RCA Records, Jose Menendez.
I know what he did to me in his house.
Rosello performed with the iconic Puerto Rican boy band from the age of 13 to 16. The group, known for giving Ricky Martin his start, was formed and managed by Edgardo Diaz. Rosello says Diaz also sexually abused him, and at one point brought him to Menendez's New Jersey home, where he says Menendez drugged and raped him.
That's the man here that raped me. This guy, that's the pedophile.
How old were you there?
14 years old.
Journalists Neri Inclan and Robert Rand made the connection between Rosello and Menendez while working on another story.
He's also this key witness in this other spectacular crime.
Rand delivered the news to the brothers, who are currently serving life sentences without parole for their crimes.
We have found somebody who we believe was abused by your father.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I, frankly, to be honest, I feel horrible. It's sad to know that there was another victim of my father. You know, I always hoped and believed that one day the truth about my dad would come out, but I never wished for it to come out like this, the result of trauma that another child has suffered. And it makes me very sad. It was pretty overwhelming to hear that. We'd heard rumors that something might have happened with Benito through the years. It's a remarkable thing that happened so many decades later. Of course, you know that would have made a difference at trial. Certainly, that would have made an enormous difference because the entire trial centered on the belief of these events.
Eric Menendez says he remembers seeing Rosello with his father in their home as a child.
My dad was one of the guys that was choosing and selecting the new members of the group. I remember him specifically taking one of the kids, going off and saying he wanted to talk to him alone, and they went off into the house upstairs.
What has to happen for the Menendez brothers to sort of see the light of day, to breathe free air one of these days? First, they have to file the petition. The petition has to be reviewed by a Superior Court judge. The judge has to grant a new trial, and the defense has to win at trial. So those procedural and factual hurdles that's a big mountain to climb.
I mean, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see how much this is going to really exonerate them. I mean, if anything, it may lessen the charge, but they took it upon themselves to essentially scrub out their parents. They didn't go and talk to someone or call the cops or whatever. They kind of took this into their own hands. And I don't know, like, I'm kind of like, why didn't you just go talk to someone? Why didn't you tell anybody? And, you know, they essentially started to, like just lie about everything until they got caught. So I don't know. Like, it's kind of like a weird case. It's a weird case. What do you guys all think?
Is this a glimmer of hope? It's a glimmer.
3 boys who say they were betrayed, now men seeking justice.
Hopefully it will make a difference. You would think in a fair world that it would. Whether we live in that fair world, really, I guess we'll find out.
We will be watching this very closely to see if the Menendez brothers file a petition with all this new evidence. They've exhausted their appeals, so this is a chance of real movement in this case. We reached out to Edgardo Diaz for comment on Roy Rosello's allegations. He hasn't responded, but has continuously denied them in the past. The trailer for Menendez, Menudo Boys Betrayed is out today. You can catch the entire series when it premieres on May 2nd, only on Peacock.
All right. So I thought this was very interesting too. I watch Vlad TV. I really like his content and the people that he has. This is Michael Francesi, and they actually talk about, he was locked up with the Menendez brothers for a little while. I think he said about 11 months, and he's going to give a little background as to what he thought about them and tell a little bit of the story why he was in prison. So this is kind of cool. Shout out to Vlad TV. He's an amazing, fucking amazing channel. Get some really high powered interviews over there. I can only hope and only wish that my channel will get to this level at some time or someday. But really great stuff. If you want to, really see some great interviews, go out, check out Vlad TV. So let's take, but even if you're trapped, and even if you're being abused, why not just tell someone And the weird thing is, if it's your dad and your mom's not doing any of that stuff to you, why would you kill both your parents? It doesn't make any sense to me. And that's probably things that the judge will look at when he, if they decide to relook at this case. But we'll get a lawyer's perspective here in a minute. I have all the videos kind of lined out, but I just wanted to play this because I thought this was very interesting. But that's kind of like how I feel on it. I don't know. It's just a weird case. It's a very, geez, that's great. That's a great story. Good anecdote at the end there. Yeah, sure. He probably had a bunch of them in his lifetime. All right, let's take a look here. Bada bing, bada bing, bum bum. What was the next video I had lined up? This one here from News Nation. Brian Enton.
The names Lyle and Eric Menendez have conjured images of rich, spoiled brothers who killed their parents in their Beverly Hills mansion back in 1989 for the money. But with new evidence, that might cast some doubt on that narrative. The brothers are asking for a new trial, and that new trial could potentially free them from their life sentences. So senior national correspondent Brian Enton is following this case, following these new developments. And Brian, we were just talking about this. I mean, this case captivated so many people for so long. What is this new information?
Yeah, it's interesting. The murders happened in the mid 80s, a little bit before our time, I think, but it was massive news then. Kind of went away, faded away, but now there's this new TikTok obsession with the Menendez brothers. So you've got this younger generation of people really into the case, and they've also got a new high-profile lawyer, Mark Garagos. He has now filed paperwork asking for a new trial for them. That's been done before, and it's never gone anywhere. They've never gotten a response for the past 11 years. What's interesting this time, though, is he filed the paperwork asking for a new trial, and he actually got a response this time from the district.
Yeah, but they were like adults at the time that this happened. They could have walked away at any time. They could have walked away. And I just still don't think it negates the fact that you go in and you blow your mother away. You blow your mother away, you blow your father away, and then it's just kind of weird. You're out spending their money like right away. It's very strange. It's a weird case.
Attorney in Los Angeles saying that they need more time to go over it. So he's saying that's a very, very good sign.
All right. So this new evidence
it's gone.
It's about their father and it's exposing some abuse, but kind of from a different perspective, right? How does that play into this?
It is. And if you didn't follow the case closely when it happened, I mean, it's the details are just graphic. I went down this rabbit hole watching hours and hours of testimony with Eric and Lyle Menendez. And I mean, they were emotional, hysterically crying on the witness stand, basically alleging that their father sexually molested them in just a brutal, brutal way for years. But there was evidence that wasn't allowed back then into the trial, which now may be, including a letter that they wrote to their cousin at one point before the arrest, talking about all of this abuse. That wasn't allowed in. And also now a member of the boy band Menudo has come forward and is also saying that the Menendez dad molested him, which would be really, really big, important news. So the attorney for the Menendez brothers, Mark Garagos, is hoping that if they can get a new trial, they could bring in some of that new evidence.
Okay, so do we know why the evidence was not included the first time? Because that seems like that could make a huge difference.
Yeah, right.
It's a good question. There were 3 trials back then. I didn't realize this either until I started digging into everything. They had a hung jury a couple of times, and it was just a different time back then in the early 90s, late 80s. Not as much sympathy for male victims in situations like this. People made fun of them. They were jokes on, Saturday Night Live and on all the late night shows. And it was just a different vibe. I mean, now I think they would have gotten more respect, at least to have their story be heard, which might explain why some of that evidence wasn't allowed in back then.
Yeah, it is interesting because you're right. I mean, people would certainly not joke about that in this day and age. Brian, we know people certainly infatuated with that case. Tell us what's on the show tonight, because you're here in Chicago.
Yeah, I am. I'm filling in for Banfield tonight, 10 o'clock Eastern. We're going to be talking about the Menendez brothers, also talking about Idaho, of course, the Idaho murders, which we've covered really extensively. They're about to tear down the house, Nicole, where it happened. Yeah, and for a while we weren't sure. It seems like it's definitely going to happen now before the trial, which is a big deal. And it's got the parents really, really upset, most of them, because the jurors may want to see the house. Just today in Parkland, Florida, the families of the victims there were on that site touring the building. The jurors in that trial had a chance. It's been more than 5 years and they didn't tear it down. The question is, why the rush in Idaho. Why the rush? So we're going to dive into that tonight.
But I will certainly be watching because I just learned that now here at the desk. It really does genuinely surprise me. All right, senior national correspondent Brian Enton, always great to speak with you. Certainly great to speak with you in person.
All right, good stuff there from News Nation. Always like Brian Enton's insights. Very, very respectable journalist in my opinion. Let's go to Law and Crime Network and see what they have to say about this. All right, from Law and Crime Network, let's do
Eric
this.
and Lyle Menendez, two brothers convicted of murdering their parents in 1989, claim they have new evidence to prove their parents abused them and that their murder convictions should be vacated. I'm Anjanette Levy, and thanks for joining us here on Law and Crime. The trials of Lyle and Eric Menendez were as high profile as you could get. It really captured the attention of people across the country.
It's time for the world to know the truth.
And now, thanks in part to a documentary on Peacock, the case is being thrust back into the spotlight. Eric and Lyle shot and killed their parents, Jose and Kitty, at their home in Beverly Hills in August 1989. Eric was 18 and Lyle was 21. At first, the brothers claimed burglars must have killed their parents while they were out at a movie. Jose Menendez worked in upper management at RCA Records at the time, and the family was incredibly well off. Prosecutors later charged Lyle and Eric in 1992 with killing their parents, claiming the sons wanted their parents' money to themselves so they could fund a lavish lifestyle. At trial, the brothers said they endured years of abuse, sexual, physical, and emotional, at the hands of their father, and that their mother enabled it. Some of Eric and Lyle's family members testified about the abuse. The siblings said the crimes they committed were manslaughter, not murder. The first trial ended in a hung jury, the second in a conviction and life sentences for Eric and Lyle. Now the Menendez brothers say new evidence shows they should be released from prison. That includes Roy Roseo, a member of the popular 1980s boy band Menudo, coming forward to say that Jose Menendez raped him as a child. Menudo was represented at the time by RCA Records. In a new petition for a writ of habeas corpus, the Menendezes have included a handwritten letter that Eric wrote to his cousin.
Listen, I'm not saying that their father wasn't a scumbag. I don't know. I wasn't there, and I'm sure that probably that stuff did happen. The only thing that I'm just saying is that, is it right to go in and like blow your parents away, especially your mom? Your mom, the mother, if she was just a witch, doesn't necessarily mean that you should go in there and blow them away. They were adults. They could have left. They could have told someone. They could have told family members. Listen, it's a very weird and complicated case, nor am I, a judge to decide what happens. I'm just giving you my opinion. They left, they went out, they reloaded and went in and went back in and gave the mom the fatal shot. So it's crazy. It's a really, really crazy case. And I'm just going to be curious to see what happens if this gets, reopened and see what happens. But, I have some reservations on it. I think it's really shitty if the stuff did happen to them. Obviously, you don't want to see anybody go through anything like that. But, you have to ask yourself, does it give you the right to go in and blow away your parents? It just doesn't make sense. If you're adults, you could tell police, you could tell a family member, you could expose your parents. So what if they're high-powered people? Like, what are they going to do? Who are they going to tell? So it's just really weird. It's just a weird case. And it's just very strange to me that after they blow their parents away, they're out spending all their money. They're not even grieving, So it's just, it's really weird. Yeah, I think everybody's kind of like agreeing, They wanted the money. It's not right. But she says, I don't think the life sentence is fair. Maybe the new trial kind of sheds, if they get a new trial, that sheds some light on it. Patrick says it's not. There's no excuse. I agree with you, Brian. Beautiful says, I think more people understand than you. Many people realize more people live with the trauma than people realize. Some just hide it better and aren't sharers. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at, I'll be open about this. I mean, I was abused by my father, but I didn't go out and kill him. You know, like I didn't do that. You know, it wasn't anything like sexual, but you know, my mom and I were subject to a lot of physical and mental abuse, but it didn't give me, you know, it doesn't give me the right to scrub them out, you know, and we dealt with that. My mom and I left, you know. So I don't know. It's just it's a weird case. It really is. UAHL says, I respect the hell out of you, Brian, but unless you've experienced it, it's something you'll never fully grasp. Well, I have experienced it. I haven't experienced the you know, the sexual part of it. And I don't wish that on anybody. And I know these cases are very touchy when we talk about them. It's sensitive. And I couldn't stand in the shoes of someone that has been sexually abused, but I've been physically abused before. And it just, a lot of things just don't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. Did they make the right, you know, if this sexual abuse did happen, did they make the right choice in what they did? I don't know. You know, again, it's just a very complicated case. Well, all right, we'll keep playing on here. I appreciate the chat. I'm not in this to kind of work anybody up this evening. You know, we're very mild mannered chat to get everybody's perspective on it. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying you guys are right or wrong either. You know, just a topic of conversation. I know this is extremely sensitive, and if it's too triggering for anybody, you know, I would just say, hey, take the show off and come back for the next one. So Patrick saying, I don't understand the social climate where we are so sympathetic to perpetrators of horrific crimes. Yeah, I think Patrick has a point. We're seeing that a lot in the Idaho. I'm trying not to talk Idaho tonight, but we're seeing a lot of that in the Idaho case. I'll be honest with you. I think that, you know, I think I'm actually going to do a show about this on Idaho and talk a little bit about, you know, kind of the highly publicized nature of it. I mean, again, I'm doing a lot of content on it as well, but it's just very interesting as the days goes on. We're seeing leaked information. We're seeing all these documents come out. You know, it's maybe twisting the narrative in the left or the right of this argument. You know, did he do it? Didn't he do it? Are there more people involved? It's just really turning this into a big mixing bowl right now. It's honestly, that's why I haven't really done much content on it. I did a show the other night. It's really, I need to take a break from this. I mean, everybody's literally going through that video right now and going, see that shadow? You see that there? Did you see the reflection? Did you hear the dog bark? Did you see someone run? Did you see this? No, I don't see any of that. I think people are seeing and hearing things in there. All I've seen in that video is a car come up, pull around, do a 3-point turn and leave. I haven't heard screaming, haven't heard this, haven't heard that, all this other stuff. People running, it's like 5 people running through the frame. It's just crazy. It's crazy. And the bottom line is the only way that we're going to figure all this out is when it gets to trial. We will fully know what happens when we get to trial, or a good idea of what happened that night. So it's just, it's crazy. You know, it's just, it gets crazy sometimes, but let's focus on this. Let's focus on this case tonight.
Cousin Andy in 1988 discussing the abuse. I spoke with famed criminal defense attorney Mark Garagos, who is part of the team representing the Menendez brothers, about the history of the case and why they believe they should be released.
Yeah, 100%.
Let me tell you what happened,
I
at least from my standpoint.
agree.
First trial was defended by Leslie Abramson. Leslie is, when I was starting out, was one of the heroines of the criminal defense, a superstar lawyer. She was just phenomenal to watch in action. She tried that first case, and the half of that jury, the jury hung, with a mistrial was declared, but half of the jury found that they did not commit a murder. And when I say they did not commit a murder, they were hung between murder and manslaughter. And the main reason for that was the abuse. There was front and center in the trial. It diminished the notion or element of malice. So then a mistrial is declared, and guess what happens?
Was Mark Garagos the attorney from Michael Jackson at one point? I think he was.
In the interim, O.J. Simpson is acquitted. And literally days later, they go to trial, the second trial. There's a new prosecutor within the DA's office. Some wags said David Kahn, who tried it, was thought to be Gil Garcetti's biggest
Thanks for
threat
checking in.
for his reelection.
I love seeing all these new names. Thank you so much for coming in and, chilling on these nights that we don't do Idaho stuff. Listen, this podcast can't always be Idaho. Like there's other stuff out there. There's other cases that we're gonna cover. I have Laura, one of my moderators. We're working on some other cases right now to bring those to light. We need to work through these other cases, and I plan on having this podcast for a long time, after a lot of these cases conclude. So there's other stuff going on in the world that we need to talk about. And I just think like right now, Idaho, in my opinion, is just really crazy. People are just getting crazy with it. And I'm going to take a little time for it to kind of settle and simmer and just listen and read a few more things and then maybe come out, next week or, a week from now, whatever. I just need to get my brain off that case and give some response as to what's going on. But right now, look, I want to start doing some other stuff here. So I'm having just as much fun on the channel doing this and chatting with all of you about these cases. And I'm glad that you are all in here this evening, hanging out. So we'll keep playing through this.
So what he did in kind of a Machiavellian move is he put David Kahn on the retrial of the Menendez brothers, and they were able to convince the judge to exclude all of the abuse. So not only was the second trial gamed, so to speak, by not having the ability to argue and to present evidence of the abuse, but even more unfortunate for the boys in justice was that the DA, David, made the argument in closing that it was just an excuse. They were privileged, affected
I completely agree,
white kids from the valley, basically.
Patrick, I appreciate you being here. You hear a lot on the Idaho stuff, the Idaho, I don't want to say stuff, but the Idaho shows. I love all the new names in here and seeing some of the old ones that have come back. Giovanna, I haven't seen you in here a while. I appreciate you being here. Beautiful is always here for my shows. I appreciate that. I've seen recently, I've been seeing a lot of Karen Cole in the room as well. It's nice to see UEHL back. It's really nice to see all you here because you fundamentally care about this this channel and continue its growth. Harlot's always here as well. I appreciate her stopping by. So, and all the new names, I appreciate y'all hanging out this evening. It's really good stuff. Brenda as well is always over here. I saw Victorine a little earlier. She's always in here as well. So, Laura S is in the room too. Thanks for hanging out this evening. I appreciate you. So if you haven't, take a minute, subscribe to the channel. It's free to do that. Turn on all the bell notifications. So every time I do a new podcast, you can all come over and hang out. All right, let's keep playing through this.
Who just didn't like being grounded. I mean, that was the
hey Ron, how are you?
The abuse. I mean,
good to see you.
The abuse.
I haven't seen your name, and you're a member of the channel. Thank you.
What happened since
been a while.
Is first there was a letter that was written by Eric 8 months before the killings took place. That letter was to his cousin. And it described, it's horrific, and it's attached to our filing. I think you probably read it. It'll shake you up as a mother, and I know it did me as a parent. You then, that letter goes to his...
Sure, I mean, this could have been I think second-degree murder probably would be my charge in this if all the evidence was there. And maybe they get this to a judge. It goes to trial. Or some new hearings, it gets turned, maybe their sentence gets to turn to second degree and they get time served and they walk. That could happen in this case. Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring this case up and follow it. I mean, no one's talking about this. I haven't seen any of the true crime channels talking about this. And well, we're going to talk about the Menendez brothers tonight. I think this is really relevant. And I think it's going to become topic of conversation that comes up. Again, I know it's not the sexy stuff out there. I say that freely, and I'm not trying to make it, be derogatory about it. But you all know what I'm talking about. The Idaho case that everybody's just really stuck on right now, and I just think that needs to breathe a little bit. I think people are getting really, really crazy about it, and it needs to relax a little bit. So, we're going to chill a little bit on it. I need to just kind of pull myself away from it as a creator from now and just really do some of this other content. So I appreciate all your patience. I appreciate you all coming in here and watching it on this new stuff. Rhonda says, I'm new, but I love your show. Thank you, Rhonda. I appreciate you being here. Rachel says, I love your channel and all that you cover. Thanks, Rachel. I appreciate you being in here. Yeah, it's great. I love all the new names. It's great. Juana saying, yes, thank you, because I'm burnt out over Idaho. Yeah, look, it's getting really, really crazy, and we need to just relax and let things settle for a little bit. Beautiful said, just looked it up, and he was hired by Michael Jackson and then fired because he was too busy with Scott Peterson case. All right, thanks for looking that up. I appreciate that. Awesome. We'll
his cousin tragically passes away. All of his personal effects are then with one of the other relatives and tucked away. Nobody ever looks through it. They then find it most recently. The letter is, I think, devastating and shows that it was not contrived after the fact. Then what happens is you've got this NBC Peacock
100%
documentary that comes out, and it turns out that there's now one of the band members from Menudo, which was a band on the RCA label that Jose Menendez was president of that label, alleges that he was molested by Jose Menendez. You combine the two of those together, you've got about as good a corroboration as you'd ever want, and it's about as good factually about as good a writ of habeas corpus as I've seen in next month doing this 40 years.
And just so we're clear, and so we explain this, a writ of habeas corpus, you're basically saying that someone is being imprisoned unlawfully, and you essentially kind of sue the warden of the prison where the person is being held. We've read the filing. We see what's alleged inside. What's the next step?
The next step, we filed it. We've attached all the exhibits. We've presented, I think, a compelling case, and we're hopeful that the Superior Court judge, this is in the LA Superior Court, will issue an order to show cause or direct the DA's office to reply to this. And so a number of variations can happen, but we're hoping to at least get a hearing or an order that will give us a hearing. And somebody much more clever than me said, think about this. If this case from the 90s was tried today, do you think for a minute that somebody would exclude the abuse? It wouldn't happen, not in today's milieu. Back in the 90s, I can understand it, combined with a district attorney.
Poll the top if you want to take a second here. I'm asking, do you like that these new docuseries shed light on old cases? Do you think they help or hurt? Let's type that up. Take that poll.
Who was under siege after a acquittal on O.J. Simpson and did not want another high-profile loss. Then take this. Somebody else said to me the other day, if these were the Menendez sisters instead of the Menendez brothers, they would not be in custody. I mean, they've been in 33 years.
Absolutely.
Eric Menendez is now 55 years old. Lyle is 52. And despite both brothers serving life without parole, they've both married women who live on the outside. I reached out to the LADA's office for comment. A spokesperson tells me that they've received this petition and it's under review.
All right, let's keep playing on here. I got 2 more videos before we wrap up the show. I appreciate everybody hanging out. I love the chat. I love the perspectives in here. The chat's been really, really great tonight. And, we're just bringing up some new cases tonight and talking about some other things that are going on. All right, let's keep playing through this. This is from the Daily Mail.
Now, 3 decades after Lyle and Eric gunned down their parents at the family's posh Beverly Hills mansion, the Menendez brothers could get another shot at a new trial, thanks in part to a former member of the boy band Menudo. Lawyers for the pair claim that some newly uncovered evidence supports the original defense used at trial by the Menendez brothers back in the 90s. Paperwork was filed this month arguing that a jury may not have sentenced Lyle and Eric
just take the Idaho night off tonight. I just need to get my brain out of that case for a little while.
Significant
it's too crazy.
Trial. Now, some might see this as a flimsy argument. If their defense didn't work the first time, Why would more of the defense make a difference now? Well, in this instance, it might make a huge difference for the Menendez brothers and possibly lead to these two being set free at some point. The Menendez brothers admit that they murdered their parents, but their trial was still not a slam dunk for the prosecution. In 1993, Lyle and Eric were tried with separate juries for killing their parents, Jose.
I like Caitlin a lot. I'm not really like big on the Daily Mail, but I really love her presentations that she puts together, her research, and she does a really great job as a journalist. So
and Kitty.
I enjoy
Both
watching
of those
her stuff.
juries deadlocked, and the case ended in a mistrial. 2 years later, the state tried the case.
I don't know, Rhonda. It's interesting. You know, it's different times. You know, courts tend to be a little bit more liberal. Back in the 80s, you know, they're a little bit more conservative. So it's going to be an interesting case to see if this gets retried. And, you know, I could see maybe they knock down to second degree, time served, and they walk, or maybe they take an Alford plea. I don't know. It's just going to be really interesting to see what way it goes, but it's definitely something I want to follow. But yeah, that's a great question.
Case again. This time, the brothers were co-defendants with one jury tasked to determine their fate. They were found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances of lying in wait, as well as 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. For those crimes, the brothers received 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now, it is a fact that Lyle and Eric Menendez killed their parents. They have admitted it. But the reason the first juries deadlocked was because of their convincing defense at the first trial, one that was prohibited in the second. Lawyers for the Menendez brothers said that the boys shot their parents because they had suffered years of sexual abuse at the hands of their father, and their mother knew about it
100%.
and allowed it to happen. Attorneys for
Hey,
Eric and
OCD,
Lyle
how
now
are you?
say that they have found more evidence of this abuse, and they want the case to be retried again. As they put it in court documents, in determining if this was an imperfect self-defense case of manslaughter or a case of premeditated murder, jurors had one critical factual question to decide. Were Eric and Lyle victims of sexual abuse?
Thank you, Rhonda. Appreciate you.
2 huge pieces of evidence have come to light recently to bolster the Menendez brothers' claims that they were violently sexually abused by their father for years. A letter that Eric Menendez wrote to his cousin Andy several months before the shooting has been unearthed. Now, the description of the abuse in the letter, it's not explicit, it's implied, but it does mark a contemporaneous account of what was going on in black and white. I've been trying to avoid Dad. It's still happening, Andy, but it's worse for me now. I can't explain it. He's so overweight that I can't stand
Yeah,
to
it could be
see
something
him.
like that.
I never know when it's going to happen, and it's driving me crazy. Every night I stay up thinking he might come in. I need to put it out of my mind. I know what you said before, but I'm afraid. You just don't know Dad like I do. He's crazy. He's warned me 100 times about telling anyone, especially Lyle. The second piece of new information comes from an unlikely source, a former member of the boy band Menudo named Roy Rossello. Now, I want to warn you that I will be discussing graphic descriptions of sexual abuse and violence. Last year, Rossello participated in a documentary for Peacock called Menendez and Menudo Boys Betrayed. In it, he accuses Jose Menendez of raping him in the mid-'80s when he was 13 or 14 years old. Back then, Jose Menendez was a big-time music executive for RCA, and the label had signed the Latin boy band. This is what Roy Rossello claims happened. During a trip to New York City around 1983 or 1984, he was instructed to go meet Jose Menendez in a limousine outside of the hotel that the band was staying at. He was then taken by Jose to a home in New Jersey, plied with alcohol, and anally raped. After losing consciousness sometime during the assault, he woke up back in his hotel with visible injuries from being sodomized. In a separate incident, Roy says Jose forced oral sex on him in a bathroom before raping him again later that night. A new 2023 jury presented with this new evidence of sexual abuse may be more likely to vote for manslaughter versus murder, as Lyle told Daily Mail a few years back. The culture has shifted when it comes to this kind of abuse, and it's more understanding today than they were in 1993 of its victims.
I think the culture is sort of changing and understanding what ramifications of sexual abuse in families are, especially when it comes to boys. And, so I feel like there's been a little more acceptance of understanding the childhood that Eric and I went through.
Now,
on an
Ricky Martin was in Menuno, wasn't he? He was in Menuno.
This night in 1989,
What if you
21-year-old
knew any of this
Lyle
was
Menendez
going
and his
on?
19-year-old brother Eric claimed that they got into a confrontation with their parents over Eric's continued sexual abuse by Jose. When the fight reached a boiling point, the boys grabbed 12-gauge shotguns, entered their family's den, and began firing at random. Jose was shot 6 times by his sons, with the fatal blow a shot to the back of his head. Kitty was shot 10 times total. The first 9 didn't kill her, and Lyle actually went outside to reload his weapon before coming back in and finishing her off. The trial of these two gripped the nation. Everything about it was compelling. You have this incredibly affluent family living in a mansion in
Look how they dressed in. They didn't even give them like tarback suits back then. They just went in fucking coveralls. Look at this. Can you imagine like the crime scene contamination back then? Oh my god. But it's like, they weren't really testing for like DNA and stuff back then. DNA testing really didn't get big until like the 90s. I mean, they had it in the early 80s and probably maybe like mid 80s, but it wasn't being used as much. But look at this guys in fucking like mechanics coveralls, the crime lab with his 2 suitcases.
Most famous zip
That looks such like a fucking setup in like an 80s movie or something. Here comes the crime lab. Holy shit.
In America, 90210. Jose Menendez had a ton of money. Kitty was a stay-at-home mom.
Crazy.
Lyle was going to Princeton University. Eric was a nationally ranked tennis player.
Yeah,
These people looked like they had it all. Now, at the time of the shooting, Jose and Kitty were renting a 6-bedroom, 8-bathroom, 9,000 square foot home in Beverly Hills worth millions, while their main residence was under renovation. Both Lyle and Eric Menendez took the stand at trial in their own defense. They gave heart-wrenching testimony in front of the jury about the sexual abuse that they say they sustained at the hands of their parents, the very people who were supposed to protect them. Lyle fell apart on the stand, talking about how he was just 6 years old when his father began molesting him. While explaining the most graphic details of the rapes, he broke down in tears. Lyle said Jose abused him between the ages of 6 and 8, and Eric told the jury he was abused for far longer, right up until the killings. According to the brothers, around the same time that Jose stopped abusing Lyle, he started abusing Eric. Eric testified that he was molested and raped repeatedly by Jose from the time he was 6 years old until he was 18. Recounting the sustained sexual abuse brought Eric to tears as well. He told the jury graphic, horrific descriptions of the incestuous relationship that he had with his dad, who he said would sometimes stick needles and tacks into his skin during sex to toughen him up. He testified that he finally admitted what was going on to Lyle, and he wanted it to stop. The brothers told the jury that they confronted their father together 3 days before the shooting, and they threatened to expose him. Then, the night of August 20th, shortly before things would turn fatal, Eric says that his dad ordered him upstairs. Eric and Lyle's recollections of what precipitated the shootings were basically exactly the same. Their testimony was this, that Eric believed that his father planned to have sex with him one last time before killing him. Lyle stepped in to protect Eric, and an argument erupted. Their parents went into a closed room, and the brothers believed that there were weapons inside. It was at that moment that they grabbed shotguns that had been purchased by Eric, and they stormed into the den, killing their parents. Witnesses were called to corroborate all of the abuse testimony in the first trial. A cousin named Diane testified that when she was 16 and Lyle was 8, he told her about his father's abuse. Diane said under oath that she confronted Kitty about this, and Kitty appeared to punish Lyle. Another cousin, Andy, the same one from the letter, testified at trial that when Eric was 13, he told Andy about being molested. Several others took the stand to testify to witnessing all sorts of mental and physical abuse that the Menendez boys were subjected to as children. There was also testimony about a rule in the Menendez home. When Jose Menendez was in the bedroom with one of the boys, no one was allowed to walk down the hallway past the bedrooms. The defense claimed that the brothers didn't kill their parents for even revenge. Rather, they were in fear for their life. Now, the abuse testimony was enough to put reasonable doubt into the minds of 2 juries in 1993. But in the retrial, the abuse, the defense, the witnesses, none of it was allowed in, so the jury never heard it. Instead, they believed the state's theory that it was the Menendez family's $14 million fortune that motivated the brothers to callously snuff out the life of their parents.
I mean, it's just such a weird case. I mean, I don't know, what's going to happen. Maybe the charge gets banged down to like second degree, time served, or the possibility of parole. I mean, how does this work? It's just a weird case.
The prosecution did have a fair amount of evidence to support this too. After killing their mom and dad, Lyle and Eric were not keeping a low profile. For months, these two were spending money like it was going out.
And that's the weird thing. Like, if you're grieving, why are you out spending your parents' money? Like, it's weird. Or, is this like, oh, we're finally free? This is like, we have the money, we can go do something now. I don't know. It's just a weird case.
Out of style. After Jose and Kitty were shot, Lyle and Eric stayed at the house for a bit in case anyone heard the gunshots and had called the police. Then they drove up to Mulholland Drive, this winding road throughout the canyons in LA, where they dumped their weapons and then disposed of their bloody clothes in a gas station trash can. Then they tried to establish an alibi. The brothers bought tickets to see Batman at a local theater, and when enough time had passed to make their alibi plausible, they returned home and Lyle called 911.
What's the problem? What's the problem? I'm sorry, kill my parents.
Lyle and Eric were not suspects, and they were treated by law enforcement on the scene like grieving sons who had just made the traumatic and shocking discovery of their parents' bloody, lifeless bodies on the floor of the den. The Menendez brothers wouldn't be arrested until 7 months after the murders. Part of what alerted investigators to their potential involvement was their reckless spending. These two bought a Jeep, a Porsche, a restaurant, a Rolex, thousands of dollars worth of designer clothes, went on luxury vacations, hired a pricey private tennis coach, and rented 2 adjoining condos right on the water in Marina Del Rey. They burned through about $700,000 in 7 months. Now, police became suspicious of the brothers, and Eric eventually confessed the crime to his shrink, who recorded it. The shrink told his mistress, the mistress told the cops. Now, in court, prosecutors said the murders came down to greed, plain and simple. The defendants, though, they maintained and still do that the killings were motivated by fear for their lives. In their request for a new trial, lawyers for the Menendez brothers argue that the new evidence not only shows that Jose Menendez was very much a violent and brutal man who had sexually abused children, but it strongly suggests that, in fact, he was still abusing Eric Menendez as late as December 1988, just as the defense has argued all along. The district attorney is considering the Menendez brothers' request for a new trial. And for the latest on that, go to dailymail.com.
Wow, great stuff. That's really great reporting. So yeah, I mean, I wanted to bring, forward this case. I think it's going to get talked about as we get, a little bit more information on this. More things are starting to come out. Some more details come out. Mark Gargaros is involved in this now. He's a super high profile lawyer. So, we'll keep tabs on this. I have to admit, I was actually really excited about the thumbnail that I put together for this episode. I thought it was one of my best. I don't know if you all didn't see it. I think it came out really good. I'm kind of patting myself on the back. I just really like the way it came out. Let's just zoom this up a little bit. I thought that came out really good. I don't know. I just was like, wow, that came out really good. So, I don't know. I think that's going to wrap up this episode. And, that's going to put episode 21 in the bag. 21 in the bag. And we'll be back soon. I am off Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday next week. I have a 3-day kind of escape from work, and I'll be back. I'm sure we'll get an Idaho episode in here pretty soon. I got to get off that just for a little bit. And I will have, I still have episode 11 to get into. It's been in my backlog. And that is my Grant Amato interrogation. I want to go through that. I'm going to probably do a 2-parter to that because it's like a 4-hour interrogation, but it is great. But real quick stream this evening. Hope you guys, hope this entertained you. I appreciate everybody popping in. I saw a lot of channel members and a lot of new faces here. Go over, check me out on Twitter at Let's Talk Live YTC. You can find me there. I have my Facebook group up as well. I do all my postings on there, and I use my community page a lot. So check my community page. I do all my OCD. Yeah, we're gonna do that soon. I've been meaning to do it. It's episode 11. I got to get that out there. But yeah, maybe we'll do that one next. Some different content, and then maybe come back next week with some Idaho stuff. Thank you for coming in, joining the chat. The chat was fantastic. I loved all of the conversation tonight. We were all really respectful. We all saw things on different sides, and that's what we like to do here. We like to put the facts out there and kind of talk about it and hear all different sides on it. So really great conversation this evening. A lot of new faces in here, or screen names that were in here. Screen names. I feel like I'm on AOL. A lot of new chat names in here. I guess that's what you call them. And a lot of the supporters, members. Appreciate you all. I will be back again this week. We'll do the Grant Amato, and then maybe this week, after this weekend, we'll pop up and do another Idaho stream when I can get some stuff together. But thanks for watching. Appreciate you all. All have a good night. Be safe, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.